Back, ladies and gentlemen. Jay here from Australia, and we've got Chris over in the UK. And what a chat it was, part one. I mean, I'm sitting there going, the people out there in this world are so, I can't believe that the Super Friends. As I said, I love the Justice League Super Friends. People with so much power, there you go. But healing powers, connecting to the earth, 5D, these things here, people are starting to find out exactly how much they can do within themselves. And Chris, thank you so much for part one. I'm just going to let you go with part two. Let's start with what you were saying about some of the people that you have dealt with and how you developed this fantastic skill that you've got. Floor is yours, my friend.
Yeah, so if we carry on from the structure that I gave you before the break. So we've got basically us as spiritual beings, which is us in true form, true essence, and that's what we're looking to get back to in this lifetime.
Okay.
So how we do that is we learn lessons in life as if it's like the school of life, and each of these lessons can come to us in any form or shape, because if you lose like the duality concept of like the 3D reality, so it's no longer polarized, you're then getting to a position whereby you need to know what the extremes are in order to know where you sit on balance and the healing perspective within those extremes, and that will be individual specific. And then what we then find is that when we come here, we're basically conditioned and trained between 0 and 7. That's when our developmental years are formed, and that's when we kind of get to the stage whereby we're a sponge and we absorb everything, and the idea is to kind of gather as much knowledge or gather as much conditioning as we can. And then beyond that 7 years, we then have to kind of uncondition ourselves to work back to who we were meant to be in this lifetime. So you've kind of got the phase one, which is being conditioned and then unconditioning or deconditioning ourselves. And then we have a phase two, which is more mission and purpose based.
Is that sort of like the breakdown, Chris? Is that like when we have the breakdown or we have an event in our life that sort of goes, right, bang, this is enough. Now it's time to actually start to break this old form down and understand where you're coming from, and then you move from there, and then you have those lessons as you go.
Yeah, so that's you'll have lessons throughout life, and that's like ongoing. So you'll have different phases if you use like 7-year intervals. So phase one is 0 to 7. Then you've got 8 to 14, where it's kind of reinforced.
Okay,
Then you've got 15 to 21, where you get an outsider who kind of shows you or mirrors it to you. So all this kind of is showing that there's a relationship that you're in, and it's a mirror of your relationship to self. And the idea is, can you look at different angles, different people, different perspectives, and work out where you need to look back to on your side to fix? But it's not really a fix, it's an alignment of self.
Okay, so you're getting that. Okay, so you're getting those. So once you have a spiritual breakdown, you sort of open yourself up, and you sort of like in prep, or in prep or foundation of what we're doing as white lighters or whatever you want to call. So you move through those stages, and they go pretty damn quick. I mean, we don't be around for it happened to me really fast. And then you sort of work out those, and then they sort of relate those lessons back when we were younger that we weren't, that we didn't understand. Now we do. With the knowledge that we've got, because we've actually broken down that 3D and moving into 5D. Am I on the money there? And then we sort of go from there.
Yeah, you're kind of in the ballpark. So what we have is, when we get conditioned, we learn behaviors that get us through, and they protect us at the time, or they allow us to cope at the time when our nervous system might not necessarily be in a position to deal with it. So the easiest thing to say is, if a gazelle gets attacked in the wild by a lion, it will go back to the herd and it will shape. So this is all that emotional release. This is that physical release of the trauma that was experienced during the attack.
Okay.
Whereas as children, we can have too much of something or not enough of something.
Okay.
And then it makes us feel like we're not enough, or we've been neglected, or there's been potential sexual abuse in early developmental years.
So that's the trauma. That's where we build up that those memories that within our bodies, and it affects us when we say we're stepping forward in life, and then we pull back because of those fears and those trauma-based responses.
So then you learn that through domestication, then you self-domesticate, and then you get the attachment to it because it feels safe for you. Then you go into like the next step, which is obviously 8 to 14, and you'll have like a friend or a colleague that will mirror you that very same environment. So if you were neglected, you'll find that they neglect you. But it's a different person, different face, same scenario, kind of playing out. Then you'll get a third stage of it. And if you haven't learned by the third stage, then there is a chance that the trauma gets so big that it'll either trigger an awakening, or it will start you looking into like therapies and stuff that then opens the door for you to go back and do like the inner child work, the shadow work, and the healing.
Okay.
But you will then continue to live the rest of your life running those patterns until such a time as you go back to deal with them. And then you wonder why people get in this loop of, it's like, well, hold on, like I look at like my relationships and they all fail, but I blame the other person.
Okay.
So
all right. So
happens?
also, if I could just hold that thought. If I say to you, with regards to the patterns coming round and round, and then you do the work, it gives you that knowledge to actually realize the pattern. Because I know a lot of patterns I've been doing, I've only just realized the last 6 months. Would that be? It doesn't matter what work you do. You just, and you got a good guide on that. So then you sort of, and then you could do the work to heal. Yeah, is that's how I've done it.
If we look at the terminology, realization is bringing into the 3D environment. So this is where you can physically see it. Recognition or recognizing is where you rewire the brain. So we can use the English language from that sense to work out where you are in the system. So you could realize that something is happening because your perspective changes and it makes you think, well, hold on, this is now a pattern in my life. So you've realized it from the sense of it's now in front of me and I can see it. Then the work begins to work out why it's there. And the chances are it's not yours, which is why it keeps showing up, because you're out of alignment. And then what you have to do is go and work out who you got it from, why you got it. And this could be ancestral, this could be blood lineage, this could be like generational trauma. But you've kind of found a survival adaptation due to an early child trauma, due to somebody else who taught you it having their own traumas. So because they haven't done the work, then you obviously have to then cope with their dysfunction. You then create a survival adaptation so you can survive, but then that creates you dysfunction. And then what you do is you get like a cycle breaker that notices it, gets to the awakening stage, and then goes back and works on it. And then what you find is once you've worked out where it's come from, who it is, and you give it back to them in essence, because you say, well, hold on, this isn't me, and this is the way I do things and how I do things, then that's when the healing happens. And then you start putting that energy out, which isn't dysfunctional, into the external. And then you get things like law of opposites, law of attraction, which then come through. And then you start drawing experiences to you from that elevated state of enlightenment because you've dropped the trauma and the baggage. And then that's the stage that we're then looking at dealing with all the work and getting into, so that we can then align and attract based on our own point of focus, rather than like mums, dads, sisters, brothers, nan from 3-4 generations ago, also being in like relationships with your cat's sisters, dogs, mum, something really ridiculous. Like those two entities wouldn't ever be in a relationship together, right? So they're never going to work.
I'm just looking up the shadow work that I do.
Yep.
Because it's relevant to, it's very relevant to what you're saying, because people hold their stuff in, they're relevant to the dark night of the soul. So they feed the dark night of the soul, and you have this, I guess, what's the word? You sort of like, you transform into the 3D and and then you're moving into the 5D once you become irrelevant, if that makes sense. Because I'm just looking at what I'm sort of, where I went with shadow work and where you're talking. It all makes sense. It all makes sense, but it's freakily.
So if you have a look at the shadow work side of things, your shadow follows you around always, but you're never looking at it because it's always behind you. So this is then the case of, well, once you look at the shadow, what's in there, who's in there, what conditioning have you got, and then you start working on that. The dark night of the soul then develops that to the point of that old identity eventually has to start fighting back. Right, because it then goes into defense mode. That's exactly what
you're doing. You understand the shadow, but you're fighting the shadow. This is what I'm seeing.
So from a mental construct perspective, you're fighting yourself, but it's because you've identified with things that aren't you, but you haven't realized they're not you. So you're not fighting with yourself, you're fighting against everything that gives you more access to the unknown, which then allows you to find more of yourself. So the dark night of the soul is that ego, death, or identity that then dies, not a physical death, a metaphysical or metaphorical death, so that you can then step into the new identity. But a lot of people these days don't realize this structure, which is why we're seeing a lot of people like with suicidal thoughts, because it's like the loss of the old unsustainable.
Makes sense.
And then what happens is they go, well, the only way out is physically by unaliving. Whereas the reality is it's just who they thought they were, or their old perspective is no longer viable or sustainable with where they're going, which is why we then get the old 3D to 5D shift. It's more heart-centered, fourth chakra, fifth density.
Because I'm looking at, because obviously with the shadow work, you're going into your heart and obviously your base a lot, and then connecting. Because I'm looking at the way I did things, and I'm saying I disconnected from the universe, which I did when I actually worked out. Like there was a certain moment. Then you open your heart up because your heart's in a cage. So I'm just looking at the notes I made when I do it. And obviously the base is basically not being connected to the earth. So you look at why those things are happening. It makes total sense, mate.
Yeah. So if you have a look at it, the chakra system is basically the densities that you go through, but it's also the dimensions are one less. So the fourth dimension is the fourth density is the third dimension. So the heart is the 3D, and we're here opening the heart in the 3D in order to step into the 4D. The 4D then steps into the 5D, which is the throat and the expression, but it's the expression of self from a heart-centered place. So what we're doing is we're working through and clearing all of the trauma in the lower centers in order to get ourselves to a higher vibration, which is then where we're looking to then change from 3D to 5D. But it's not a destination or a place. It's a way of being and a higher frequency of existence, whereby we can manifest more of what we want quicker, rather than being confined by the density and all of the social constructs.
Have you got information? Have you got information sheets on this, my friend?
It's up here.
I am deadly serious. Have you got information sheets that maybe you can develop?
I can develop stuff. But I've got a couple of presentations that walk through a load of concepts and theories that
is that on your? Have you got any? I know we talked about the socials and stuff like that. Are you starting to develop that?
So I'm on TikTok under Physical Finesse. So that's FINESSE.
That'll be on the bottom. So what we'll do is just to let the viewers know to contact Chris. The email and your social media name will be on the bottom of the screen, so you can contact him at any time. So this is like, it's for me. That's why I'm looking at because I've got my shadow work which I've done. So it complements very obviously it complements it, but yours goes to another level where you actually access your shadow with. Where I'm looking at if I access my shadow, because what I'm doing is when I talk to people. They access their shadow and look at it themselves. Now, I can help them heal stuff, but moving on, say, Akashic Records with Jackie and then yourself with hypnosis, going back and specifically looking at particular parts. See, that's why I'm not skilled in. This is why I'm doing what I'm doing, because I think that the world needs to know about people like all of us that have the skill in what we do. Because, if you're going to be a superstar, you can't do that. But what we've done today for me is just looking at going, okay, the heart chakra. Now I know, and I know where all my stuff has happened. That's not a problem now. And I've gone and accepted and looked at the patterns, but also still growing from that. I've learned so much from just talking to you for an hour. Amazing, mate.
It's always going to be a journey rather than a destination.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
What we've got to look at is the more of your shadow you look at, the more of your shadow you can then look at. And
yes,
the more you find that there's like little tweaks. Things like that come out of the woodwork. Because a lot of the work I do is so diverse from that perspective.
So that's what you got. That's what I'm asking about, information sheets for our viewers and your clients, because you've got so much knowledge in that head of yours. Obviously, the last hour I've learned so much. To talking to a lot about. We had Steve Forchetti on last week, and we had Karen Mandel, who's a self-sabotage coach in the States. I mean, there's people out there who are us that we need to come forth. So, yeah, sorry, I'm just gobsmacked with some of this stuff, man. I love it. It's great. And
But then when you start looking into obviously all the shadow work, you start looking at the inner child healing, you start looking at childhood trauma, you start looking at past lives, you then go into things like tarot reading, you can then go into numerology, you can go into astrocartology. And once you start piecing
crystal healing and all those kind of things, crystal healings and all those kind of things,
So you literally just find as much information about yourself as you can possibly find. And then what you do is you feed it into one big system, and then you work out exactly where your misalignment is. So I can make it sound really simple that way.
No, that's what it is.
Every individual is so customized, so complex that you literally then get to like a language barrier. So when you refer to somebody as you or they or we or us, you're always talking about yourself from that perspective. So it's like they did this to me, and then you have to rewire that understanding of how you're.
That's right. Yeah, well, that's what we did. That's what you do in the Shadow Warrior course. You talk about I am, I will, I'm grateful for. So we did all that, and basically going in. Can you tell us a little about the hypnotherapy? Because as I say, I've been hypnotized, and I was fascinated when Greg Riley did it to me, and he did it over. Mate, this is how good this bloke is. Like I don't know. I'm no expert, but he did it over Zoom. Obviously, it was during COVID. He did it over Zoom. And I going, alrighty, I've seen all the shows. I've seen all the shows. And I've gone, okay, yeah, righty. I believe it works. I just want to go through it. And oh my God, he goes, you're not going to say your name. I could not say my name because he tapped into my subconscious. And he made me not do it. And do you want to, how does that work for you, Chris? What do you do with your
because everything's obviously energy. You can use this remote, so technology and the advances in technology have just meant that the reach of people that we can talk to are hugely different now than what they once were. So obviously hypnotherapy works over the fact of you're just guiding somebody through with suggestion to a place where their nervous system is calm and safe enough for you then to shut off the prefrontal cortex, which is the thinking part of the brain that develops after the age of 7. So obviously when the trauma or anything happens before 7, there's no gatekeeper. After 7, there's a gatekeeper. So you can only filter things. So square pegs go in square holes and round pegs go in round holes. A square peg can't fit in a round hole, but then you can't re-educate yourself from that perspective.
Would you say the ego, would you say the ego is sort of getting developed there too, Chris? When you, after 7, do you think we're sort of really getting, we really are developing that ego to get to where, I mean, obviously teenage years and, when they come 13 and then they start getting a mind of their own. Would that be fair?
Yeah, so if we go to basis of ego, right? Everybody needs ego because it's designed to protect you.
Agreed.
Right?
Yes, agreed.
But it isn't necessarily configured correctly in order to be protecting you all the time, which is why some people's egos are enlarged and they then cause problems rather than like protection of self. So it's when it gets too big that it becomes a problem. But you need that ego in order to have understanding about where you fit in society and how you operate. But when we get to that perspective, you're shutting that down. So you're not going to be conflicting. So if you get a suggestion like go back to a scene or here's the problem and it's related to say anger or like then gets stored in the body as say arthritis, you can then give somebody an instruction which says go back to a scenario related to where the anger and the arthritis come in. And then what you'll find is you'll have like a modern day scenario that's like, well, this happened in this period of time, and it goes back to the structure again in periods of 7 years. And you work backwards to get to 0 to 7. And then once you hit that period, you're likely to get enough of the story to then connect it and then disconnect it. And then what we do is we reprogram the mind from there in order to understand the story as if it's a neutral event. Because the only way we have meaning on things is when we place negativity on a neutral situation. If I ask you for like, can I have a drink? Or can you get me a drink? Right? You're not going to go, oh, that's negative or oh, that's positive. It's just an instruction. Whereas if I say, oh, you're really silly, you're going to go, well, this is what this translates to in my head. But it's because we've been conditioned that way to make certain things. And then that's where we get the problem, which is then why hypnotherapy allows us then to get information. And it's what we do with that information when we plug it back into the system, which is where the work then comes in, in terms of making sure that the individual understands that, hold on, this was a lesson. Now, have we learnt the lesson? Can we move on beyond it? And can we go, oh yeah, that makes more sense? And that's without judgment. That's with compassion, with love, with kind of that whole self-care, self-love element.
You'd like to think that we could go like, say we'll go to the relationship. You'd like to say that you'd like to meet someone. It's all nice. So obviously it's honeymoon period, but you'd like to think that, you know, that could stay. Why can't that stay forever if you find your purpose? Like you can still have the respected people, but because we're in 3D, they sort of like there's self-centered, not being respected for doing your purpose. Like you have to actually give out, especially us light workers, and you've been through it. We give away our power and our purpose for others, and that's not really the way it should be. And the second part to that is, have you seen the Samadhi video?
I don't think I've seen the video, but I can give you a bit of a background on the relationship side.
Go for it, so, and I'm going to find the link to Samadhi. I'm going to send it to you in the chat. Go for it.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Floor is yours.
So when we look at relationships, the idea of relationships is technically to get into a relationship that's long term. What you then have to do is you have to find out about the other person while finding out about yourself.
Yes.
Because what then happens is that the two of you should then be able to grow together. But you have things like karmic relationships, you have like soul flames, you have people that come in for a reason, people that come in for a season, you've then got twin flame, you've got you've got karmics, and then you've got kind of just reason, season, and potential like lifelong. So what then happens is we come into the relationships and we get the honeymoon phase, is what you said. So this is conscious creation. This is if you and I were together, this is what life looks like. Then what happens is after that period of honeymoon disappears, what you get is you get the conditioning and the programming coming in, because it's no longer conscious creation, it's subconscious creation, because you're familiar with yourselves, you've moved in together, you have this understanding.
That makes total sense.
Then, well, how were you conditioned as a child? And how was I conditioned as a child?
That's where I'm going.
This isn't who we are as individuals, but those two individuals aren't compatible. So therefore, you get all the flags that come up saying, well, you're not balanced here, I'm not balanced here. Then what you should do is come together to mirror each other and grow together by doing the shadow work, doing the inner healing, right? But a lot of people don't understand
that's
this.
Pretty much twin flame. That's pretty much the perspective of twin flame. But unfortunately, because we are not connected and we are connected, we can see that, understand the inner child work, understand where we're at, and our inner child work, our inner child problems are affecting our relations. That I found out. And now we can see that you work on yourself to become better, to attract a better person that mirrors you, that you can grow together. That's a simple analogy, but I mean, there's more to it. I mean, but you know, that's just something.
Ultimately, you could use the twin flame journey as a journey of self, balancing the masculine and the feminine energy in self. Yes. So it doesn't then even necessarily have to be kind of you're looking for somebody outside of you, but it also can mean that.
That's right, exactly.
Family and things like that.
Yes, exactly.
But then what you do is you eventually grow together.
Yep.
And then the idea is, can you get each other to your individual alignments, which then means that you can either choose to stay together or you can choose to go and have other experiences. But there's no animosity, there's no conflict, right? But it might be that you've got a bigger soul purpose, which is why if you both get to the stage where you're doing the work, you can carry it on for life. Otherwise, it might be a reason, it might be a season. But then the question is, can we get back to this honeymoon phase? Because this is who we are, without the conditioning and the programming.
It makes total sense, because you've got that initial endorphin type thing that happens, but then you really get into what you're doing. But I think more balance. I looked at it. It's really funny that I see in my life, I've seen perfect couples, because I never had it. I never saw that. It was bloody shit.
Yeah,
we can swear on this. It doesn't matter. But the amount of people I've seen that are the perfect couple is amazing. And I go, you're the perfect one. You're the perfect one. You're the perfect one. That is coming from me. I know it. But I have to do the work. As you said, you have to do the work and go through the crap and open your heart. Number one, open your heart, because mine was shut. Open it up, go through, bang, bang, bang. Then someone will come that will come, and you'll just go and you'll have that We'll talk about Disney later.
Yep.
Have that Disney. Yeah, we'll go. Yeah, you've got the same theory as I have. That
Yeah,
so-called
I'm with
Disney.
you.
You know where I'm going.
I
Have that
know.
Disney. Have that Disney moment, but on a nice
Yep.
level. Like you'd like to have that person that does like you, that
Yep.
you do connect with. And we're not going Disney. We're going real life. I'd connect, and you care for each other. You have your ups and downs, and you actually pick each other up. You don't hold each other down to better yourself. We'll go. There's a lot more stuff we can go into.
It's that opening to vulnerability, but the problem nowadays is if you have somebody that you're with, you're basically competing with all of their childhood trauma. And the problem is, if you're not on the same page, or if you don't have the same understanding, then you obviously butt heads, and then there's no conflict resolution.
Would you say? Would you say? Sorry. Would you say the first thing that came to my mind was, especially twin flame journey, being a little bit so-called expert in it now, I guess, going through it. Someone does the work, someone doesn't, and that's pretty much where it's at. Because you open up, and then it's a pure spiritual awakening and the killing of the ego. You do the work, so you're becoming a better person. The other one doesn't want to do it, which is based on the masculine. The feminine, you're healing your feminine energy, opening yourself up. So then when you do move on, you go, thanks very much. I've found someone who's at that level, which would be a soulmate or whatever, and we can walk on together and won't be any issues.
Yep.
Well, no, you know what I mean? Not any issues, but you can grow together safely. Safely.
Yeah. So what you generally find is that if one party doesn't do the work, then you're constantly creating an energetic gap. That's why you eventually have arguments. But like, if you look at it from a physical perspective, like when you have arguments, you end up shouting. But in the physical, it's as if it's like, well, hold on, you can't hear me. But in reality, when you look at it from a higher perspective, it's the hearts of the individuals have gone so far away that they believe they have to shout in order to be heard.
You're gonna do some info. Can you please do some information sheets, man?
Of course I can.
If I get anything out of this other than getting everything I've listened, please do some information sheets or something that you could give to give to the world, mate, not just our listeners, the world.
Oh, I'm working on it. Trust me.
Cool. That's
But
awesome.
Yeah,
awesome. It's been amazing, mate.
Hearts.
Amazing. Yes, it makes sense. It makes to someone who's connected. It makes sense, man. Like, and then you do, and people always say, like, they want that, the Prince Charming, Prince, Snow White together. You can have that, right? But it comes together. You've got to grow together. It's not like someone I'm not here to help you and you and defy me. We're here together. We're going, right, I'll help you, you help me. It's like that.
Yep.
You know what I mean? It's not the role thing of, they talk, well, I can go talk about roles the way they're going these days. The masculine, feminine role.
That's a whole new ball game.
Oh, that's it, mate. We'll get you on for that one. Oh, Jackie
we can talk about anything. Trust me.
Oh, Jackie and I we're ready. We've got some pearlers to come up on our thing, and we're having experts on. So you're on our list. Don't worry about that. Sorry, awesome. I'm going off track. So we're going about you. So you have worked with people. We've got about 7 minutes. So. Relationships. Let's keep going with that one. I think that's a big topic in the world. Where do you sit on relationships with regards to what you do and how you can help others?
So interestingly enough, when I went back to the spiritual, the mental, the emotional, and the physical element, I've worked basically a formula that it doesn't matter what your niche is, and it doesn't matter what area you come to me for, you can do everything in one place because it's tailored to the individual and their own healing and their alignment. Right. So if you have a relationship problem, it's relationship to self. What we have to do is work out what that relationship to self looks like and work on it from there. If you have money issues, it's self-worth and self-value. But it's still the same principle. It's finding out your alignment and what's in there that isn't you. And then what we do is we break the structure down. And then if you go on to like health and fitness, well, why are you carrying extra weight around? Because you're carrying somebody else's problems that aren't yours. So we don't need to necessarily work on it linear 3D physical in terms of diet and nutrition or exercise. We work on the emotional behavior, which is generally stored in the stomach or that second chakra, and that's where it builds up and gains. So when we work on that and we release it, we can then get ourselves into a position whereby we can get better gains and we can physically train the body. So you can work on pretty much, or rather, this is my method that I use based on disjointed learning. And you basically get yourself to a position whereby you can come to me with a physical ailment, you can come to me with any mental health problem, you can come to me with relationship issues, you can literally do shadow work, inner healing. It's basically against the norm. It's an all-in-one, under one roof shop for you actually self-actualizing or self-realizing.
Okay.
And it
All
doesn't
right.
matter
So
if it goes into business or if it goes into anything else.
doesn't really
It's
matter,
all the
does it?
same
Yeah.
process.
Okay.
Yeah.
So would they with your business, Chris? Obviously, would you work worldwide? Would you work on a Zoom meeting, or would you work one on one in the? Do you have to be in your presence, or is there like distant healing? I know because I do Reiki distant healing. All right.
Yep.
Yeah.
So all of my stuff has the energetic component, which is over, as long as I can see you and I'm connected, then I can clear bits of energy in terms of looking at that. I can connect long distance in terms of Akashic records. I can basically talk to your subconscious. I can gather information on my side. So all of it is remote. If you're in person, then it may or may not magnify the effect, but I haven't found a negative connotation with working in person or online. So a lot of kind of my people that I work with at the minute are remote, and I've got somebody over in Oregon of America, and like in Portland area. So I work with her, and she's come on leaps and bounds, dealing with all her traumas. I've got somebody who's up the road from me, for instance. We haven't met, but we obviously do a lot of work online, and in 2 weeks, she's literally just a whole new person. And all of this stuff, it's like we've got the physical elements that we're working on that medical society says there's no cure for, and we're curing them, like the lady in America. We're reducing her diabetes, we're getting her off medication. She's now down from 4 of those to 2 of those. And like we're slowly piecing these jigsaw pieces together to get people off medication so they're no longer feeding into the corporate system and naturally going to more holistic healing methods. And literally,
freedom fighters, we are freedom fighters.
I'm trying to get to the stage whereby I can push this out worldwide, but obviously my limited like languages will prohibit certain areas. But
well, this is the platform for it. This is what we're trying to do.
Yep.
Trying to get it out. So you're and do you are you word of mouth at the moment, Chris, or you just how did you start out? You just sort of put it out there because you said you didn't really do social media a lot. Did you?
Yeah. So a lot of my stuff was word of mouth, and it was people who knew people, and then obviously they were getting results, and then they were going off into sort of the wider world. But you've got really silly things that come up, like somebody running a business that can't move forward, but then there's relations to like emotional eating, which then puts a barrier up. But then that's linked to conditioning from like being in a swimming pool from years and years ago, which then stops them moving their business forward, and then they self-sabotage. And it's like, you can't write some of these things, but kind of having worked with a lot of people, like some of these stories, it's like you could never go to like your standard therapist and do this stuff. So the work that I have is huge on a scale, but currently I'm in that word of mouth phase, and then I'm building the socials on TikTok, Insta, and YouTube. So like,
love that. You're part of our crew now, and mate, we're honoured to have you. We've got a couple of minutes left. I want you to plug where we can find you. Just a brief overview of your skills, and mate, can I just say before we finish, mate, this has been an amazing chat. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation, or my invitation, to come on the show. This is what we do to talk to people that we need to expand, and we need to get this stuff out there. And this is what the Life Theories crew and Jackie and I are trying to do. So really quickly, mate, you got about 30 seconds. Sorry, just so I put you on the thing there.
Yep. So if you go to www.physicalfinesse, and that's FINESSE.com, you can book a free discovery call. It'll give you a bit of my background on there, and basically have a look at the socials. So Insta, TikTok, and YouTube, you can find it under Physical Finesse, and then there's a couple of extra bits on the end, but you'll see the consistency across the platforms. And basically you can come to me with pretty much any problem in life, and I'll have a solution for it.
Mate, that is absolutely sensational. Well, you can get hold of Chris. We've got 1 minute to go. Guys, thank you so much for joining in on a chat with Jay on the journey of a Whitefeather with Chris, all the way from the UK. And as I always do, I always say thank you for being involved. And I make sure that every time you get up in the morning, we've got a great hero of mine, Brett the Hitman Hart, which is Jackie and my hero. And we always get up and say, we want to be the best there is, the best there was, and always the best there ever will be. Thank you so much, Chris, for being involved today. And we really look forward to seeing you in the future. Thank you so much for tuning in. Life Theories, 1111 Spiritual Podcast, on live weekly. We look forward to seeing you then. And thank you so much for being involved. Take care and always be your best self. Peace out. Thanks, Chris. Take care.